Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. Today we continue on with Dylan Rounds. We've got a mixture of stuff to get through. A little bit of an interesting take on Kurt Wadsworth, considering I've not done too much coverage on him. We are going to be taking a look at Kurt Wadsworth's recent talk and his opinions around Brenner, believing Brenner is basically innocent and not the one who killed Dylan. I know there'll be all kinds of opinions all over the place about that. What I do want to say in advance, in contrast to last night, which was good, tonight could get messy. Okay, so just be prepared for that, because of course it depends who joins on in, who appears in the chat. So just be ready. If you need to block people, right? Indiana, I maybe was half joking about how there's no resistance anymore, probably because I've got most people blocked, and it's like, that could be the case, but if it's more peaceful for you, i.e. Indiana, then that's what you do, right? Just as an overall observation though, because I don't go around blocking everyone left, right and centre, what I can highlight to you is that the people you may have blocked here and there, everyone that was present last night was on good behaviour, okay? I saw it all. There really wasn't any trouble, right? So once again, it's that proof that here and there, when everyone's all in the same room, it can be stable. It is possible, right? All the other trigger points are unnecessary. They may happen at other points, they may happen tonight, but there is also proof that it can work at other points, moments, right? And I think we'll also take a look at last night's comments, see if there's any questions that need to be answered, any key interesting points or information provided by anyone. We will see. Probably do that first to allow people to join on in. Also, shout out to the recent people, Poppy Rose and who is the other one? Did it begin with a W? Can't remember. I remember the person's face, and I think they had blonde hair. Shout out to them for becoming members recently. What has finally now happened, which is good because of the timing as well, with enough people being present as a member, I was finally able to unlock that next slot for the custom emojis. So now the new and improved whip emoji is present, right? I think I titled it The Big Whip. You can use it yourself if you want. And I tried to do it a bit differently this time. Instead of it being a transparent emoji, where the background colour is basically of the background of the screen you're on, right? This one's actually got a border around it, just to make it stand out more, okay? And in terms of the design, it's me with the red robe on, with the belt, holding it high above, ready to strike down judgment, okay? So whenever there's chaos, that emoji can be issued. Harder hitting than any other whip emoji out there, which is all good. And yeah, what we also can do today, and compare it in between this video, there is a new article, a newish one, about the Dylan Rounds case. Just read through that, see if it's consistent with everything we're hearing at this moment in time, right? Another point I just want to bring up now before I forget is, in addition, as we do go along in this video, make sure to share your thoughts, opinions and reactions to what we're going to be talking about. And as said, we are looking at Kurt Wadsworth's opinions. I'm going to play audio to you from what Kurt Wadsworth has said himself. We're going to analyse it, and I'll probably break it down bit by bit to make sense of it, okay? I also have a standalone video coming out, a very short one, more directed towards Weezer, so be on the lookout for that. Don't worry, Weezer, don't get worried. It's not a dodgy one, it's just an observational one on the maps. It'll make more sense when it drops. But what I want to say is, at what point are people convinced and satisfied that something has been tied up in the case, loose ends tied up? At what point are people satisfied and are in agreement with, let's say, what the LE, the family, say when providing updates? Because still to this day, people do question the family and maybe question some reports and articles out there that you're only basing information, you're only basing updates from this one source, Candice Cooley. Is it enough? People, others saying, no, it's not enough. We need to hear it from others. We need to hear it from elsewhere. And it's like, of course, but you can only work with what you have. But maybe it'll make more sense later on when we tie it in with Kurt Wadsworth. Like, if there is evidence here and there's talk here by official people in authority, is that not enough to convince people that that individual's guilty or that there's no one else involved, right? Now, I'm not going all in on that because I'm still looking at it overall at the possibility others out there could know something or have helped in some way. Even Candice Cooley kind of has gone backwards herself and decided to think about that too. So, opinion-based for a fair portion of it, right? But those court documents and press release, are people satisfied with that when they see information of that? What we've seen previous when we read it out in my past videos, make sure to check it out if you haven't already. As well, make sure to check out my previous video too. The previous video was analysing the disturbing finding of abandoned clothing in a shed in Lucin, giving my thoughts, opinions, breaking it down, looking deep at it, including the bras and all the bits and bobs, and as well revealing the location of the place. If you're interested in any of that, make sure to check out my previous video. The link will be down below in the pinned comment section, right? But yeah, I mean, I'll just give you my thoughts and opinions when it comes to a case. Let's say, first of all, a bit of a different scenario, but if I had to stop covering a case, I would only stop either because of one of two things. Either one, it's been solved, or two, direct authority have stepped in and told me to stop. Because if continuing, there'd be consequences, okay? And when I say that, I'm not talking about someone acting dark, mysterious, or cryptic and telling me to stop. I'm more like if it was police or if it was the actual family officially, okay? That's never happened yet, but it's always a possibility. That's like just how I work off from it, because I know some people will say, well, you shouldn't have to stop, you should keep on going. But it's like, you got to be practical, you know, you don't want to cause more trouble than it's worth, especially on yourself as well, because it could catch up. And also there might be a true reason to why you need to stop as well. But that's not happened in the Dylan Rounds case at this moment in time, so it's all okay. General public, the odd person may have said stop or move on, but you know, there's no consequences if you ignore those, right? They're just general public, that's it. They're not really going to do much about it. So there's that. As for information that's processed, published, released, when I do hear about it and I look into it, I'll first of all scan and check if there's any contradictions or lies, and if there is, then I'm probably going to be very wary about it. But if there's no contradictions or lies at that point, I will absorb the information and assume that it is genuine and it is the case, unless down the line there's differing information, counterpoints that are brought out. You know, that's how I work. I don't know how other people operate, but I guess there's a fair few people in this case that are a little bit cautious, even when it seems like the truth is coming out and that there is genuine progress made. There's still a fair few that are a little cautious. And I know people could criticise those for being that way, but I don't whatsoever, because the case in the early days and mid-range part have been so unstable, have been described by many people as a roller coaster, up and down. You don't know, you don't have stability, like with the information or what you can trust or who you can trust with all that drama as well. And that can have long-term effects on people just within a case, right? When it comes to what do you listen to and what do you ignore, right? So it's bound to happen. It's inevitable, just like many other things in life, right? So I think with that out the way, not really much else to say. Kathy Waters, just a little shout out to Kathy Waters for being on good behaviour yesterday. She must have received her bird feeder early, okay? I guess the squirrels this time did not steal her nuts. Guess that's a positive. And yeah, not seen Gorilla Jack recently. Not seen Joseph Lloyd much, but it is where it is. With that being said, we'll go into the comment section now. It might be brief, but there's no harm. We'll go for it. As for discussion post and post in general on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page, there isn't anything of interest there. I do check regularly. If you haven't noticed or you didn't know, it's no longer called Find Dylan Rounds. I believe it's called Justice for Dylan Rounds. Does it make sense? I don't know. I mean, you've made some form of justice for Dylan, getting Brenner charged after all this time. That's a bit of a victory in itself. Yeah, no conviction yet, but on the way to that. It should have been, the title of the page should have remained Find Dylan Rounds, because what ultimately has not been found yet? Dylan Rounds. Like, if you found Dylan Rounds now or in a week's time, then you renamed it to Justice for Dylan Rounds or Legacy of Dylan Rounds, it would obviously make more sense. But, it's not the end of the world. I just wanted to point out as an observation. Let's head on over to those other comments and see if there's anything of interest. Here we are, arrange it to newest. What do we have to begin with? Tom Evans. It all seems too strange, but I would like to know who built the shed and why and when it was built, whose property it was built on, did Box Elder check the shed out, who searched the shed the first week in June. So a couple of those questions, Tom, will be answered further on above, as there is the odd few responses in terms of who owns the shed, the parcel of land, okay? Racetrack, first time watching this channel, welcome Racetrack. If you are interested in any other mysteries from time to time, feel free to check out my Kenny Veach M Cave playlist, which is available on my channel, okay? Patsy Rainwater, was the clothes Dylan's? I don't know. That's still like an ongoing question. You'd think if it has been searched by police in the past and the clothing may have been in question, linked with Dylan, then it probably would have been taken away. Now, in general, even if the clothing wasn't to do with Dylan whatsoever, maybe not even missing people, but it was stolen goods, I'm just surprised that the clothes were never taken away, retrieved by the LE and put somewhere. Maybe it works different, because like in the UK, if clothing was found, reported, police come on down or someone does and takes the stuff away. Even if it's not like a serious crime, it's taken away. Does that not happen in the US? Are the police more careless and they're not really that interested in a bit of clothing that's crusty? Maybe. Patsy, a pair of woman panties and thongs. I guess so. I mean, I got mixed up with a thong and a face mask during the virus. But then again, I'm sure you can, remember the memories of all that time back then. If you did put a thong around your face, you'd probably develop some kind of infection there. So, yeah. But, looks can be deceiving, right? I don't know where I'm going with that, to be honest. Clee, Patrick, Blanny. This video raises many more questions than it answers. It does in a way, but it spreads awareness. Some of the questions have been answered in the comments here, or maybe further on up. Some questions were also probably answered in the chat last night if you go back to it. Overall, though, down the line, it might be cleared up, Okay, on other YouTube channels, there's been a lot of talk about this and that, and it's faded away with time. But here, just keep on hammering home on certain points and findings and observations to try and ultimately get an answer from someone or some kind of consensus within most people, okay? Christy saying the frogs are back, you can tell. If you keep thinking the frogs are going at it like constantly, I mean, they probably are, yeah. But as for that clip, it is like the same clip. You know, I'm just mainly using it as a countdown timer. And when Tara was saying how she doesn't like the countdown in the corner, it's necessary for it to be there, because if it's not, and people come into the live premiere and they see it's titled Dylan Rounds, but they just see a video of a frog, they're going to think it's misleading, they're going to accuse it of clickbait, they're going to back out, report it, whatever, right? The countdown is there to inform and notify people that the video isn't all about what's on screen right now. It's just in the background whilst awaiting the actual video. Okay, so it is necessary. As I said, I did use a countdown timer in the past, but I can't do that anymore due to third-party corruption, manipulation, in which these third-party twats of humans are claiming copyright on the content which is in public domain. And yeah, it's a mess. So I'm not going down that route again. It's too risky. Gen T, the metal-looking hook is a plastic closet organizer. Never heard of that before. I think a few people were saying that it was like some kind of branding tool, a cow branding item. Some people were saying it was a horse one. Now, if it was more to do with a horse one, has that got anything to do with Brenner going down there and putting it there, or using the item on his horse? I don't know. Horseshoes, I don't know. Glenn, another good video. Shout out to Glenn. Torrid, Helen, whatever you say his name. Why so long time analysing those clothes found in July? I mean, default profile picture, dodgy username, can't spell for shit. Yeah, disappointing. Juan says another entertaining stream like always. That's good. He found it that way. I would say probably more so last night. Probably the best combination to this date so far, right? Because you had both the humour and messing around, but it actually merged well with the focus on the relevant points being talked about within the Dylan Rounds case. So you're able to keep a level of focus and interpreting the information that's been talked about, but as well being able to have fun at the same time. Whereas maybe other times in the past, people have been pissing about, but there's been a bit of a disassociation between what's been talked about in the video and what people are talking about in the chat, right? I think Ellen Berg might have highlighted that at one point in the past. But last night, it was a good combination. Robert, a realtor has software that identify parcels of land by owner name. Okay, I think that's, I keep forgetting his name. Or is it Autism Without Limits? That username, that person, the one with the blue profile picture. They were able to get a hold of who owns that parcel of land very quickly last night. So I assume they had the correct website and like what Rob's talking about here. Sun, what does Sun have to say? Hello, Warlike Wrath, nasty looking place, lands found, sex shack, human trafficking. Oh my God, you found a dildo. How did Lance miss that? I don't know. I mean, you could finish that sentence off in many different ways. Very suspicious. Wonder why Kurt Wadsworth and other YouTubers who went out there missed it. How did Heavy D miss filming this? Monsters under the bed. I hope Ty Corbin, other locals comment on this place. I believe Bustamante. Or was it Buster? I don't know. Person with a dog profile picture last night popped in. I think they're from Jim Terry's channel, I believe. And they said that they were going to reach out to Ty Corbin and let him know, does he know about the shed and the items within. Yeah, it'd be interesting to just see it from Ty's point of view. Like, this is the thing. I wouldn't be surprised if the likes of LE or maybe the family or some people out there searching have gone to that shed property and looked inside. It wouldn't surprise me, right? Because it stands out and it's not far from the grain shed or Dylan's farm. So it would be like a default place to check for the sake of it, right? When you're looking for Dylan. But this is where the issues lie. Has that location and the contents within been discussed publicly, online, even documented visually, analysed? No. It's only of recent time. So like, if Lance Kelly was criticised for doing it too late, but he only just stumbled across it now, then it's not as problematic. Unless he's seen it in the past and gone back to it again, then it's a bit weird. But it was worth him documenting it. Now, as for me, someone could say, why is it taking you this long to analyse it? Because I've only just heard of it now. I've only just known about it, right? The bra shed on the maps, I've briefly questioned, but there wasn't too much to talk about and not many people said anything, even when I did ask questions about them. And then when I found out just recent that the bra shed, what we saw in Lance's footage, which is also the same as on that map I've been talking about in the past, it kind of clicked in my head and I was like, oh wow. But you're not going to know. You know, if it's not really talked about much online and it doesn't receive much coverage or attention, people aren't going to know, right? But I guess there's more awareness being spread now and more concentration in a way. Anyway, what does Sun also say? The bra size is about 40D. Okay, that's good to know. So technically, I wasn't far off the mark. Now, how do I word this? In the past, randomly, I did guess as well the size of one of those with I don't know how to word this, but in the past, I guessed it as well, and I got it right. So, personally, I don't know why I'm able to, but I guess if people say, well, like Raf, can you tell us something about yourself? What are you good at? And I say, I'm able to guess people's bra size. I don't know why I'm able to guess it, but there you go. Very thorough evaluation. The hoodie looks like the one Dylan was wearing in pictures. Okay, yeah, I was kind of thinking that as well. How did everyone miss this? I wonder how Ellie, Ty and Lance missed searching this new structure 8 months ago. Unless some of them, if not all of them, did go to it at some point in the past but never thought of documenting it or recording it, which obviously would have been much more helpful, you know. I agree the FBI would have taken the clothing for DNA assessment, wouldn't they? Well done. Ari, what you found disturbing, little underwear, new daffodils put high in a tree like a memorial and knife slashes on a tree. Maybe you should report it. Child missing. So that's one thing I did do in the past. Like the first time I came across it, typed it in online, not underpants, because you'd come across basically underpants all over the place, but, you know, name of the location, missing people, it came up with nothing, checked all the different newses, nothing whatsoever in the actual area, no posters whatsoever about a missing person. So, you know, it's still a mystery, but there's no true indication to say direct action is needed, you know. But I remember someone did leave a funny comment saying, oh, with coming across those dodgy pants in the woods, you know, you're going to trigger all the conspiracy theories out there. Now, this is the thing, you know, speaking of pants and all that kind of stuff, don't know why, but there was that time in the past where Pancakes in his live stream said he doesn't know what underwear size he is. I don't know if it was ever resolved, that, you know, unless it's one of those things where space and time and historians will never find out the true answer of Pancakes' underwear size, but, you know, life moves on, end of the day. Are we going backwards? Oh, I'm going the wrong way. I thought Robert Aviles walked away from a work detail after bailout. I don't know. If anyone else can clear that up, feel free. Okay, here's the key piece of information that may clear up some of your questions regarding that shed from last night. Patsy says, the owner of the property where the bra shed is located lives in Oakland, California. Unclear as to when he purchased the land. There's a gap between the last transfer deed dated 2019 and his current of 2022. He has an active Twitter account and website with photos of himself at the Sun Tunnels. He also wrote an article for Box Elder newspaper. Can't read it though. Not a subscriber. I wonder if he's aware of the activity. I don't know. I mean, one of those situations of possibly trying to reach out to him to see if he responds, like an email, that could be helpful. I don't know who this person is. I don't know his account, his name, or his profiles. I guess you got to be careful how you handle that stuff, because you don't want to start a witch hunt where other dodgy people in the background hound that individual and scare him off. So I guess just got to work around stuff like that. But yeah, hopefully that answers some of the people's questions. All I say is, whilst you do have parcels of land out there which there's nothing on them, and the majority of the people that own land out there don't even live within the area, what's the actual point of it, end of the day? I think Candice Cooley said it's something to do with tax, avoiding tax, or reducing tax or something. If anyone knows, feel free to explain. Anything else? Oh yeah, there's Indiana's comment, like what I mentioned earlier on in this video. Moonflower Poppy Rose hook looks like a cow branding fire tool. I think a couple of people said that as well last night too. And then some said it was to do with a horse. I mean, if it's to do with a cow, and there was a comment last night where someone was saying how I'm surprised no cows have walked on into the shed with the door, well, with there being no door. But as you saw in Lance's footage, there was remains of a cow nearby. Only one from the looks of it. Don't know how long it's been there for, but maybe cows have been nearby, and I don't know if they would have gone inside. They might have stuck the head in. I guess it depends how fat the cow is. If you got a fat cow, they're probably not going to fit through. And yes, I'm still talking about a cow. Okay. What else? Jacqueline. The blue plaid shirt with black hoodie in photo of Dylan are two separate pieces of clothing. Okay, that's kind of good to know. Could reinforce the idea of that hoodie, what we saw in the shed, Lance's footage, could be of Dylan's. I mean, I know other people's clothing as well, a little bit odd, right? But used to try and put the argument across that there's many other missing people out there, and the shed area is a hot spot for disposing of the clothing, or some of it. Maybe you could put that argument across. Jacqueline Rampley, here in UK, kitchen bags aren't as strong as bin bags, just saying. Underwear on hangers would come from a shop. I don't think people hang bras and knickers up on a hanger. Mine are in a drawer. Thank you for sharing. I don't know why. I mean, I guess people have different, methods and techniques when it comes to handling the bits and the bobs. I mean, Stoney said she doesn't even have any. I don't mean breast. I mean, she said she doesn't wear a bra. I didn't question why. But then again, to be honest, no wonder why Stoney doesn't wear one, because all the fucking bras are left in the shed. You're just leaving them dumped around. That's not good, is it? Okay, so you want to be free, you want to move and flow with the wind. I don't know. I don't even know where we're going. Anyway, let's just move on. Bill Brooks looks like a new viewer. Shout out to Bill. Welcome to the channel. New tracks, fresh. I mean, they look newish. There was a comment last night, can't remember who, that stated those track marks were from a bulldozer back in 2021. Very specific, that. Can't remember the backstory behind it, but That's what one person said, at least. Bill Brooks also said, is there a road close by to the shed of the bras? Yes, there is. A dirt road, there is. Herbs Healers. Now, just very quickly, if you didn't know, any of you, because, people change their usernames at times, if you wondered where Wham Bam Pam was, you remember Pam. There's Pam on screen, now known as Herbs Healers. It took me some time to realise who it was. I'm being honest. What did she say? Thank you, Warlike Ref. Not sure. I think the mob crew was out there and seen the shed. Oh, okay, interesting. Not 100% sure. It seems like he ran over it with his drones. Okay. Around the first couple time was out there. I'm thinking he was out there about the time Heavy D was out there early on. He was out there a few times in the first couple of months after Dylan came up missing. He did run over quite a few buildings and dodgy things around the farm and the shed area within a couple of miles. Don't think it would be more than 10 miles there. So you're welcome, Pam. Thanks for sharing that. Now, I kind of do remember little bits, portions in the early days when Mob Crew in his live streams was playing drone footage, I guess, of him going out there with one of his family members or something. Was it a cousin or some? I mean, how much of use was it? I don't know. He did discover those track marks in the wash, but that was later cleared up as excavation marks by the search and rescue to do with Dylan Rounds, so that's cleared up there. Is that it? Okay, that's it for the comments. I think it's probably time now to move on to that article regarding Dylan. So the name of this article, what we're going to read, is from usaherald.com, titled Arrest Made in Case of Missing 19-year-old Utah Farmer Dylan Rounds by Jackie Allen, March 22nd, 2023. I've only just come across this, and it was worded as created one day ago, so I assume that there's probably an add-on from this article which is more recent, but we'll just read through it anyway to check for consistencies or inconsistencies. I refer to Brenner, Dylan Rounds. Keep seeing the reoccurring theme of the same photos used. I'm surprised I've not used any of the more up-to-date photos of Brenner, such as the one where he was in Weber County Jail. He was sat down with his handcuffs on and his blue overalls. Dylan Rounds, a 19-year-old farmer from Idaho who was working his own farm in Utah, has been confirmed dead. I don't know, has it ever been officially worded like that before? Not really. Well, they've worded more so, Brenner charged with the murder of Dylan Rounds. It's basically the same thing though, but I guess just the way the word it differs, right? This one's a bit more bold, directly to do with Dylan himself. It says he had been missing for almost a year. True. The alleged killer is James Brenner. The 59-year-old ex-convict has been charged with the teenage farmer's murder. So you could interpret, although there's not been a conviction yet, this article seems very confident and certain Brenner is the killer. Okay? I mean, I agree to an extent. I agree to an extent as well, right? Continuing on. Box Elder County authorities brought charges last week after they found Rounds' phone and recovered an incriminating video. It's worded a little bit poorly, that, where it says charges were brought last week after they found Rounds' phone. The way it should have been worded as from retrieving the phone back in the past, months ago in 2022, and then in more recent time coming across that incriminating video. Candice Cooley was told about it, briefly I guess, in November of 2022. Though the actual LE, who knows how long they've held on to it for, right? The video images of Brenner wearing bloody clothes and cleaning a gun. Moreover, they found Round's DNA on the clothes. Wait, why are they saying the video images? You can't really have video images unless you took a still screenshot from the video. Maybe that's what it means. Bit dodgy, the wording. According to court documents, Brenner was squatting on land next to Round's property. No. They're still getting it wrong, aren't they? I mean, okay, next to Round's property, but there's like a 5-mile distance between the two, so they're not exactly next to one another, are they? It says where authorities also found the missing man's boots and farm truck, which at the Grainshed property, the farm truck, they basically mean the grain truck. We're seeing this repetition of unclear language. Not good. They found blood on one of the boots as well as Brenner's DNA. Worded a little bit better, that. But it's not saying anything about Dylan's blood found on the boots, or it linking to Dylan, unless it's mentioned lower down. But just to clear things up, the boot of Dylan's, where blood was found upon one of them, belonged to Dylan Rounds. It was his blood. And fingerprint DNA belonged to Brenner, who moved the boots. Okay. Goes on to say, deputies first identified Brenner as a suspect over the summer after his arrest on firearm charges in July, unrelated to Dylan. He now faces a charge of aggravated murder as well as abuse or desecration of a body and is accused of concealing Round's remains. Once again, the way it's worded, that the sentence, desecration of a body, which could involve moving it somewhere and concealing it, hiding it. But in that same sentence, it's got a comma, and then it says, and is accused of concealing Round's remains. Desecration falls under moving, concealing, or removing and placing elsewhere. So if you just thought, in your own opinion, that desecration, basically Brenner moved Dylan, buried him in one spot, and that was it, the end. The way this sentence reads, yes, that took place, and also concealing the remains too. What, a second time? It's just how you interpret it, right? It's not always great the way it's worded. Brenner shot a man at a Maryland campground in the 1980s over a work dispute. Court records show his past criminal history include malicious wounding, malicious shooting, and 3 prior convictions for being a felon in possession of a firearm. Now, that malicious wounding, malicious shooting applies to the Maryland incident in the 1980s. That work dispute. Basically, Brenner shot at someone in the leg, okay? So it wasn't fatal, but the person still got hurt. And originally, that case, when Brenner was in court, at first it was treated as like attempted murder, but then due to the attorney and I guess working things through the legal team, they were able to, I guess, reduce it, lessen it from that to malicious shooting. Malicious wounding, because it being in the leg area, a bullet wound, and that was all. So he still got punished for it, though not as much as if it was like literally planned and it was done to kill someone, okay? That's why I always tie it in with that concept of, because Brenner, from at least all the court documents, Brenner has never killed anyone until Dylan Rounds. So did anything feel different with Brenner on that occasion? Was he aware what he's done immediately? Was he in shock, surprised, or didn't care? It's only because if you've never done it before, the first time you do it, whether you're a serial killer or not, you may react in some way. You might not show it, but within, you may feel different. You could be shocked. Oh my God, what have I done? I've gone too far this time. Or, for some darker reasons, you could be excited. Oh, cool. This is what it's like to do that and to see it happen. You know, depending who you are and how you are. But, you know, just leave your thoughts down below in the chat too. How do you think Brenner reacted? You know, if we're saying it's a snap moment, which most people are saying, like it wasn't literally planned, then it was unexpected, the outcome, right? And if it was unexpected, the outcome, was it a surprise to Brenner due to how far it went? Did he panic? Was he cool about it? Was he excited? Was he saddened? We can do a poll right now, just a rough one. What do you think was going on with Brenner's emotions at the time after he snapped with Dylan? Anyway, Dylan Rounds remains still missing. Page 2 or 3. Okay. Got that channel there. Some of you may have seen her. Can't remember the channel name. Talking about Dylan Rounds' case. I guess to talk about a range of different cases, but they don't lock on to just one like how I do. And as well, just briefly point out, the reason why I stick with one case at a time is it's just because it's less confusing for me and then I make less mistakes, which is obviously better. But also, if I keep switching and changing with different videos, it does mess up the views and the awareness and consistency. So based off statistics, as well as awareness, as well as people just learning about the stuff, it works in my reality with just sticking to one at a time. Okay, in case you're wondering. The article here goes on to say, as part of their search for Rounds, investigators served several search warrants. 2 of them led to federal cases against men who had interacted with Rounds before his disappearance. Brenner, Chase Venstra. When police announced the murder charge against Brenner last week, they ruled out the potential involvement of Venstra or any other suspects in the disappearance of murder. So the police, you're saying that the police has ruled out any involvement by others. And yet Candice Cooley, who has been in line with that for quite some time, in recent time with Doug on his channel, them two ended up questioning possibility of someone like Don Hately being involved to an extent. So going against what the police have said, what does that make you think differently or not? Anything else? Rounds, who loved farming, spent no time playing video games or on social media like others his age. This is all copy and pasted to what we've heard of in the past. It's incorrect, this. Dylan Rounds, as described by Candice Cooley, Dylan played Farming Simulator when he was 11 years old or so. And as for social media, Dylan did have a TikTok account in which he uploaded 2 videos of his pivot, I believe, and some other farming related one in Lucin, Utah in 2021. Okay. So he had a bit of activity on there. And I guess Facebook too. Says he's gone out on his own as a teenager to build up his own farm in Utah, according to Candice Cooley, Round's mother, and was farming in the town of Lucin near the Utah-Nevada border. She suspected foul play almost immediately when the family member lost contact with him on the 28th, yet we've seen this. Search for Rounds remains ongoing. The search is concentrated in a rural area with a number of abandoned mines and cave systems. I think we've seen most of that. And then Jackie, there you go. She's a technology geek. Okay. Her clients include Samsung. Oh, I love Samsung and technology companies. Long time no see. Okay. So that's it for this article. I wouldn't really say it's a wow. It's consistent. If you want my opinion, for parts of it, it's consistent at being wrong. Okay. The bits about the video games, the bits about social media, the bits about the property of Dylan next to where Brenner was, that's incorrect. Poorly worded. Some other points as well. Now, just briefly, I just want to highlight one more thing. So regarding that farming simulator and playing video games, What's the whole talk and significance and relevance of that conspiracy tied to Dylan Rounds as portrayed by Salty Pancakes? Been mentioned in the past, faded out, mentioned again in recent time. Is that because he can't think of anything else to talk about, or is it because new discussion points have popped up? Take in mind, I don't watch everything, so I'm not going to keep up with everything because I'm doing my own stuff as well. But is there anyone here that can summarise the actual importance of what's been raised by Pancakes? Like, when I think of Farming Simulator, okay, it's just a game. Single player, you're not having to compete or play against any humans. You're not playing online. There's no toxic encounters. You're just playing casually and you're having fun, okay? If you're good at it, you're good. If you fuck up and crash the tractor into the trailer, or you try running over the sheep in your truck, you know, I probably tried that at some point in the past. It didn't work though, unfortunate, but there you go. It's, you know, you just experiment, right? But still, how does playing Farming Simulator lead to Dylan's disappearance? Is there some kind of conspiracy that Dylan Rounds playing Farming Simulator gets into some online interaction with other people playing it, and then he gets, beginning with the G word, can't say it because YouTube gets sensitive over saying it. Well, actually, no, to be honest, I'm sure I've said that word. I might have already said it, or it's been mentioned in past videos. Yeah, because the video footage of Heavy D, Lance Kelly inside of that mine, and Heavy D said, you know, was Kurt the type to, you know, do stuff dodgy, and Lance agreed with the point about Kurt grooming Dylan Rounds. That received a little bit of backlash, that. If any of you are wondering where a portion of the fake accounts and resistance came from, it was around the time I analysed the footage in which Lance Kelly agreed with what Heavy D said about Kurt Wadsworth grooming Dylan Rounds. You know, if it wasn't true, you just simply disagree, right? But because people were so snappy and verbal and resistant, it's like, whoa, calm down. Why are you getting so defensive? You only get defensive is when something is true or when you're getting close to the truth. So all you're doing is revealing more suspicion around that stuff. If there is nothing odd to see here, don't make such a big deal about it when you respond, right? Regarding that, at least. But linking back to that Farming Simulator, I played like simulator games in the past, and they can be a bit boring, right? They tend to be more of a realistic approach. You can buy the steering wheels, the gear sticks. You can, if you're doing the flight simulator, you get all those controls and everything. You're doing the truck simulator, you get all that, right? I didn't. I just randomly played the odd game, crashed the truck and left the game. That was it, because I got bored. But some people will find it more fun. There was a train simulator in the past, and that was kind of fun because you could pull all the levers, right? I just pulled all the different levers. Same with when I was in a plane. I didn't know what to press. I just pressed anything and everything, and it worked up to a certain point until I came across that building, that tower. But that aside, you know, you get online mode with some of those games, but not all. So I just don't understand how it applies to Dylan going missing. If Dylan was playing a game like that when he was 11 and faded off from playing them down the line, right? I just don't really see too much suspicion about it. I mean, I'm surprised no one's done like deep dives into TikTok and who's following Dylan Rounds on his profile and who was he following at the time. I'm surprised no one's done that yet. I mean, well, I guess I went for it briefly in the past. If you ever need to refer back to it, it's actually on there. But I've not seen anyone else do it. So I think it's now time to move on to the main part of this video. welcome if you have just come along. Hi to those watching in the background and those lurking in the shadows. If you do want to rewind to the beginning to catch up on the stuff, feel free to do so. But if you're just watching live right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play to you the audio of what Kurt Wadsworth says, but as well what Pancakes believes regarding Dylan Rounds, okay? A portion of it. Then I'll give you my thoughts. We can analyse it. You can share your thoughts in the chat as well. And then there's a little bit more audio as well to do with Kurt talking and giving his, telling his story of things and how stuff developed. But more about that later. Let's just focus on one bit at a time. Play it right now.
I think he's on the property somewhere.
Fuck no, dude. What the fuck? Are you kidding me?
What about the main line?
No, hold on, Kate. The reason I say that because Brenner only had 30 minutes of a timeline.
32 minutes.
Brenner didn't do it, so whatever. I don't know. You're going down a dead end road on that one.
Right, I thought I'd use Google Maps when we're talking about this with the project of the timestamps on the day of the 28th with Dylan Round's phone pings and timestamps from them up to the point of where it's supposedly in Brenner's possession. I just wanted to use this so then I can respond to what Pancakes said about his opinion of where Brenner put Dylan, okay? But first, let's just focus on Kurt Wadsworth. So you heard Kurt Wadsworth just shake the claims that Brenner is responsible. It's like, nah, he didn't do it. You're going to be going down a dark road at this point, It's a dead end path. Brenner didn't do it. Brenner is innocent. That's basically what Kurt Wadsworth was saying. It's like, yeah, but there's evidence. There's evidence to show that Brenner was in the presence of Dylan Rounds, right? Even, let's just say you strongly believed that Brenner did not literally, physically, first-hand kill Dylan. There is blood on Brenner's hands, literally, and on his sleeves, on his shirt. Brenner must have been present in the presence of Dylan to get Dylan's blood on him, right? There's no way around it. Now, if for whatever reason Brenner was in the presence of Dylan when someone else attacked Dylan, or if Brenner came along to find Dylan hurt, attacked by someone else, then why did Brenner not report it to the police or to the Rounds Cooley family, right? Even that's dodgy, most likely because Brenner was the one that did it in the first place. And if you're the one responsible, you're not going to phone up and confess, are you? Not the smartest of things to do. And because of Brenner's personality, he wouldn't have just owned up like that on the spot. Not a chance. You think about the boots as well, which also had a droplet of blood on them, which was linked to Dylan, and the fingerprints, DNA of Brenner as he moved them. Why would you need to move those boots? There would be no need, right? So there is evidence here and there, which obviously ties Brenner to it. Not so much evidence, but just common sense of Brenner being near to where Dylan's farm is, arguably, and in the presence of Dylan on the day when Dylan went down there, as the phone pings demonstrate. I believe maybe later on in the video, Pancakes or Kurt says that, who's to say that Dylan was in possession of his phone at the time? It could have been someone else. But, you think of that phone call as well made, and Dylan's own voice on the end of the phone, and Karen hearing it, you thought they would have picked up on it, because who else is going to do impersonations of Dylan's voice? Can't imagine it that much, right? But let's return back to Pancakes and his view on things. Pancakes was saying how he thinks that Dylan Rounds was buried at the property. And I assume when they say a property, Pancakes means the Grangeshed property. Why is that the case? in such a smallish area close to the scene of the crime, wouldn't the police, Ellie, family have retrieved Dylan by now if that was the case? I mean, you could put the argument forth that Dylan was buried somewhere around here temporarily and then moved on elsewhere later. That's always a possibility, right? If we're thinking of desecration and the specific wording of it, what it can entail. Though, you got to take in mind the time stamps, the time of day and how much left Brenner had of that day to get on with things, alongside with going to the barbecue, meeting up with Don Haley. Obviously, more than two hands can get the dishes done quickly. So if anyone else did step on in and help, then it could have been done all in one day. Though, if it was only Brenner, you might have been limited, restricted to what you could do at that time. Temporary, and then a following day or later, a permanent move of Dylan. Right? Pancakes was highlighting, and somehow Kaylee corrected him, 32 minutes, 30 to 32 minutes for Brenner to dispose of Dylan. This is what I don't understand. So you're telling me, well, Pancakes, Kaylee is saying that Brenner only had 30 minutes in the entire whole day to dispose of Dylan. He only had 30 minutes out of the whole day. That doesn't sit well. That doesn't make sense. And we're just going to briefly reconstruct it, the day when it happened, okay? Just bear with me for a second. We need to return back to Dylan's farm on the day. So I'd assume Dylan woke up and it was before 6:50 a.m, right? It would make sense considering that 6:51 a.m, that's when the first phone call was made, a successful one, to the grandma, Karen Rounds, stating he needs to park his grain truck in the grain shed. And this was just outside of the gate going into the property, right? Then, a few minutes later, 6:57 a.m. or 6:58 a.m, Dylan calls Brenner. Unsuccessful. Brenner probably had his phone turned off or simply ignored the call. Dylan, you'd assume, somehow managed to get through. The gate is wonky. It's fragile, so it can be probably pushed over. It's not that strong, okay? Driving up to the grain shed property, as Candice Cooley strongly believes, and that's at 7:03 a.m. So roughly around this time, from this time, 7:03 to 7:27 a.m. is when it went down. Not the disposing of Dylan, more so the killing, the murder of Dylan Rounds. Okay? So, some people might be thinking, what? It took 30 minutes to kill Dylan? Other people may be thinking it took a total of 30 minutes to kill and dispose of Dylan. In my mindset, what I'm thinking is, at 7:03, Dylan got to this point to the grain shed, right? The grain truck was parked in the shed when the family came down days later. So someone at least parked it in, but it's unknown to who did it, right? Because at 7:03 a.m, 28th of May, 2022, Saturday, in the morning, once Dylan was at this point, maybe Brenner got out of his trailer, because it's not far from Brenner's trailer, and then confronted Dylan. May have had a bit of back and forth arguments. You don't know how long that went on for. And then Brenner struck, snapped, took it out on Dylan. And then what happened after that? Well, at the 7:27 a.m. timestamp, that's that video recording on Dylan Round's phone, inside of Brenner's trailer, of Brenner cleaning a gun, which he had in possession of at that time, as well as blood on his shirt, which that shirt was recovered down the line by the police when they went to his trailer and confirmed with the DNA and results test labs that the blood on that shirt from that video recording all tied with Dylan's blood. So Brenner, right, tiring with the timestamps, must have been in the presence of Dylan when Dylan died. Okay? So even if humans were in denial that Brenner wasn't the murderer, he was most definitely next to Dylan when Dylan was killed. So if it was someone else, then surely you wouldn't expect Brenner to take the rap, to take the fall for someone else who actually killed Dylan, right? At this point, Brenner has, what has he got to lose? He's facing the death sentence. You wouldn't expect him to just stick with that and let the other person get away with it, right? It just doesn't seem likely. So, obviously, you'd resort back to the obvious, that Brenner is the only one. And like I was saying earlier on in this video, what does it take for people to be convinced by a certain truth, certain information provided by, family or authority, LE, court documents? At what point does it stop being questioned or countered and actually absorbed, right? As we see here. We've seen all those court documents. We've seen all those news articles, and they are mostly consistent with one another, stating the evidence, who it's linked with, and Brenner being charged, etc. So, at least from Pancakes' point of view, Pancakes seems to believe, at this moment in time at least, that Brenner was the murderer, from inferring from that audio. But Kurt disagrees. Though Pancakes feels that Dylan is buried somewhere around here, and it all took place in between 7:03 a.m. to 7:27 a.m. Roughly 27 minutes. If you want to round it up, 30 minutes max. 30 minutes to take Dylan out and bury him? I would say 30 minutes to take Dylan out with the conversations in between and maybe confrontations, and then possibly either temporarily disposing of Dylan or just simply keeping him inside the grain shed, right? And then Brenner went back to his own trailer to clean up until he made his next decision, right? Though, the only thing I will acknowledge to an extent, trying to understand it from Pancake's point of view. How and why did Brenner get blood on his shirt? How? How did the blood come about? Was Brenner standing too close to Dylan when he shot Dylan, let's say, and there was a blood splatter? Did Dylan fall into Brenner's arms when shot? Or is it more to do with when Brenner took Dylan out in that time frame of the 30 minutes? It also coincided with disposing of Dylan, and that's why there's blood on Brenner, because Brenner picked up Dylan and carried him. But then again, could Brenner carry Dylan's weight? Maybe not. With Brenner's health, Brenner's age, how strong is Brenner? All these little factors we've got to take in mind, because obviously you can get blood on you in many different ways, but in this situation, a murder case, is it because of Dylan being too close to Brenner, or Dylan falling into Brenner, some kind of scuffle, close quarter combat, or just simply Brenner picking Dylan up and dragging him somewhere, maybe dragging him into the corner of the grain shed property so he's not, in sight if anyone did pass by. You got to look at it from different angles. What I do feel is that Brenner had the rest of the day to either dispose of Dylan or do other things and clean up and try and, get rid of any traces, which wasn't exactly a success, but possible, right? It's only because of the way Pancakes worded it, Brenner only had 30 minutes to dispose of Dylan. Only had 30 minutes. That's the part where it can be heavily countered by the fact that post Dylan's death, 7:27 a.m., leading up to 7:43 a.m., At 7:43 a.m., Brenner left. Well, supposedly Brenner, if we're assuming, because of Dylan Round's time stamps, right? If the murder took place just before 7:27 a.m., right? Brenner doing whatever to Dylan. Brenner now in possession of Dylan's phone, okay? That's what we're assuming. After 7:43 a.m., bit of time gone on, that's when Brenner decided to move on from the looks of it, and from Dylan Round's phone timestamp, went down to Dylan's farm. As you see how I worded there, 7:43, Dylan Round's phone leaves Grangeshed, arrives at Dylan Round's farm, the blue marker. A total of 30 minutes spent in this area. And we have looked at it closer. Make sure to check out my previous videos about Brenner going about here, looking inside of the trailer, the vehicle itself, opportunities of stealing items, what was the first thing that came to Brenner's mind when he was in this area, etc. We've already looked at that in deep. Make sure to check that video out. Once Brenner's got what he's needed, returned back, you would assume, because the next phone ping was back round here. There you see. After the farm visit, returning back to the Grangeshed property at 8:23 a.m., Dylan Round's phone returns back. And then, what happens? What does Brenner do? I don't know. But the next and final phone ping of Dylan Round's phone, which you assume is in possession of Brenner, is at 2:51 p.m. Dylan Round's phone is dumped in Lucin Pond. And most likely just after that, that is when Brenner decided to go to Don Haley's place and they had the barbecue. Did Brenner confess there and then? I don't know. Could he have revealed something to an extent? Maybe, maybe not. It depends what his mood was like, if he had any marks on him, any stains. I don't know. Like, did Brenner even take his shirt off with the blood on it? Or did he keep it on when he went round to Don Haley's? I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But do you see that the timestamps are throughout the whole day? You agree, right? And do you also agree that there are certain periods where there's a big silence in phone pings, right? So anything could have happened in between those periods. And the periods I mention, make sure we're facing the correct way, is just after Dylan's death, you assume, from that video recording, because of the blood on Dylan, you'd assume Dylan's already gone by then, right? From just before 7:27, just a little bit before 7:27, up to 7:43, stationary in this area, right? So if you want to tie in both the murder of Dylan and the disposal of Dylan in that time frame, it's not a total of 30 minutes, Pancakes. No. It'd be roughly from 7:03 a.m. to 7:43 a.m. So about 45 roughly minutes. Bit more extra time to do other things in between, right? So that's just making one correction there from what Pancakes stated. 32 minutes? No. 40 to 45 minutes? Yes. And I say that because after 7:43, the phone ping went down to Dylan's farm. Most likely Brenner going down to maybe seek opportunities of disposing Dylan, right? That's the way I see it. Because if you've already disposed of Dylan Rounds on the property, like Pancakes stated, within 30 minutes, then what's the point going down to the farm area to take the truck? What are you going to do with the truck if you've already disposed of Dylan? The only reason why you would take the truck is to transport Dylan somewhere to dispose of him. And the only reason why you wouldn't use your own truck, because it incriminates you more, and it might create a stain, a mess, a smell, you know. Maybe Brenner doesn't like the idea of dead bodies in his own possessions, in his own trailers or vehicles, but he'll use other people's, just like how he used other people in the past, like with Bibbins, when Bibbins would give Brenner free rides all over the place to shops and to get food, but Brenner would never pay for the cost of the fuel, right? One-sided, okay? So that's the way I see it, okay? If you think different, you can give your own thoughts, but yeah. And also, the next one, if it wasn't within that 45 minute period, right, you could say from 7:03 a.m. up to just before 2:51 p.m., right? 2:51 p.m, just a little bit before that, that's when Brenner set out to go to the pond, hang around there, which he stated himself, but not admitting to what he actually did in that area, though it ties in with the phone being dumped there with that time stamp. So, yeah. I guess overall, the main goal to why he was going down that way was to go to Don Haley's barbecue, right? That's why it's always been referred back to. Whether he confessed or not, that's what Brenner was going to do later on in the day. So from 7:03 a.m. to 2:51 p.m, Brenner had all that time in between to dispose of Dylan Rounds. Not 30 minutes, but over hours worth, right? 8, 9, 10, 12. Maybe like 7 to 8 hours to dispose of Dylan Rounds. Not 30 minutes. You understand? More than enough time. Considering it's a ghost town and not many people visit, you don't have to worry too much about people coming and seeing Dylan out in the open, right? Because you've got the grain shed property where you can conceal Dylan to an extent, dump him in the back in the corner of the room. Who's going to notice? Maybe no one. No one at all, if no one's around, okay? And as well, I do agree to an extent that Dylan was at least buried and concealed before the 30th of May. Okay, that's one thing I will acknowledge in my opinion. Let me know if you agree. The reason why I say that is because common sense, you want to dispose of someone as soon as possible, right? You don't want it dragging on. And also, secondly, is because on the 30th, the family did come down and that's when Dylan was reported missing, right? So you got family, search and rescue, police coming on in, sniffing about. You want to dispose of things quick before it gets into a sticky situation. Though I acknowledge that if desecration, the act of moving a already buried body and taking it somewhere else, that could well have occurred going on into June, up to June the 16th, when Brenner was finally charged of unrelated charges, those gun charges, not to do with Dylan, but he was finally taken away from the area. So he had about 16 to 18 days of walking free, 16 to 18 days of having the opportunity to move Dylan Round's body if needed, if necessary, or just to simply get rid and dispose of additional items, such as June the 2nd, the spring cleaning. And considering the fact that Brenner was able to do that in the presence of the police, the LE, and a sheriff that went up to him and questioned him, and he was able to get on with it and do it successfully, and the police weren't able to track down the bags from the looks of it so far in this case, then it's possible for Brenner to do what he does. To an extent, to a point, he was invincible, right? Even when the actual police were around, he could still do what he want. So that could apply to Dylan as well. So I think Brenner had more than enough time to dispose of Dylan, and definitely more than enough time to have another crack at it and relocate if necessary. So I don't think it's all down to a 30-minute timer. You know, what was Brenner racing against time? He only had 30 minutes because someone was coming down to visit him. No, not from the looks of it. If any of you disagree with what I've said, list it down below and explain why. Do any of you believe Pancakes is correct in what he said in that audio? Yes, no? Leave your thoughts down below. And do you think Kurt Wadsworth is in denial, delusional, yes or no? Because let's just have one final take on Kurt before we move on to the next bit of audio. If you've got a friend or a family member or a loved one and they've done something bad in the early stages, just like if you were kind of like the victim's family of someone going missing, like a friend or a son, you're going to be in denial at first, thinking, no, this can't be the case. This can't be happening. No. It can't be. But it is, right? Because you know that person, you can't comprehend the fact that they've done something bad, or in the victim's situation, you can't comprehend the fact that someone you know, someone you care about, has been taken away for good, been harmed very badly, right? It's just denial. And you go through the different stages, different types, different forms. Some people go through it in different orders, right? So does that apply to Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds? Well, with Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds, they said from like day one when they found out about the boots near the Grangeshed property with the blood on, they had a bad feeling that something was definitely wrong. But I do feel that in the early days, they were still somewhat hopeful that Dylan would just magically return back, walk on in, return back to his farm. They even said it themselves. So they still had hope in the early days that Dylan may have just been taken somewhere, kidnapped, or hurt in a farming incident and he needed to be found as soon as possible. There's a level of denial. Also, well, there was a level of hope disguised as denial. And with time dragging on, as well as evidence found, it pointed more towards the fact that Dylan was no longer alive. And that video recording of Brenner with the blood on him from Dylan, which impacted Justin from the looks of it quite a bit, you could tell that it pierced through that denial, that they got a reality check, a dark reality. And slowly with time, they came to accept it and understand the importance of continuing on to retrieve Dylan and to get the justice and to spread awareness and continue with that Dylan's legacy. Right, that's the order of them. As for Kurt Wadsworth, from what Montello locals have stated, Kurt Wadsworth being a little bit out of control, having a bit of a temper, taking it out on the wrong people, thus leading to the closure, up to now at least, of Saddle Sore Bar, business going downhill, Cowboy Barn Grill being affected as well because of Kurt Wadsworth's behaviour and attitude and treatment towards other people in Montello, from what Montello locals have stated themselves as witnesses. Okay, that's what they said, not me. And then with Kurt Wadsworth also being a bit drunk on and off, supposedly switching and changing information throughout the interviews online, where he may have been paid or not to participate, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of up and downs, a roller coaster. Kurt Wadsworth's behaviour, almost like a symbolic microcosm of this case, the processing of information, what's right, what's wrong, you know, has it been retracted? Is it being pushed forward? I don't know. Unstable, uncertain, unpredictable. Okay, that's kind of like how it is with Kurt Wadsworth, right? And with Kurt Wadsworth immediately saying, nope, Brenner, he's not involved. It's not him. He's not the one. And he supposedly has stated it previous when the odd viewer on my channel have listened in to what Kurt said. So he's been consistent there, consistent in defending Brenner. Is it a surprise? Not really. To some people, some may assume that Kurt Wadsworth is covering for Brenner because they're friends, covering for one another, looking out for Brenner. There's that, I guess. The way I see it is still that level of denial. If Kurt has been impacted overall because of Dylan's disappearance and his actual friend being involved in it, it's like a triangular effect, right? Let's say you've got Kurt Wadsworth in one corner. He's friends or somewhat friends with Dylan, but also somewhat friends with Brenner. And when he finds out one friend is no longer alive and the other friend caused that, it could be a sense of betrayal, so painful, hurtful, and a shock to the body, the mind, that you can't comprehend it at the time. And that's why Kurt Wadsworth cannot accept the fact that one of his friends has taken out one of his other friends. And he feels like now, although his other friend is still around, Brenner isn't quite, because it's been taken away. So there's distance there, and major distance between Kurt and Dylan, because Dylan is literally not here, nor has been found. So there's no closure there. And just simply the the disassociation mentally between Kurt and his feelings towards Brenner because of Brenner, what he's done. And despite the levels and layers of evidence coming on out, showing and depicting Brenner being responsible, still Kurt can't accept, because he must be still stuck in that stage of denial. Hard to comprehend and understand what's truly happened. Maybe down the line, let's say if Brenner confessed truly in front of Kurt Wadsworth, then maybe Kurt would believe it more, right? I know not everyone will agree with what I say. I know some may be very hardline and in support of Kurt, okay? And I know there'll be some, like Joy Perry and others, that think the only reason why Kurt is claiming Brenner is innocent is because Kurt is involved as well in some way. Or like play a part or knows something about Brenner, but only cover him because they're friends and they're looking out for one another, right? So there's a level of manipulation and lack of genuinity, okay? So, do we do another poll right now, if there's time? The poll is, do you think that Kurt Wadsworth is in denial at the fact Brenner is responsible for Dylan's death? Yes, no. Another option could be he's not in denial. He knows Brenner's done it, but he still doesn't want Brenner to go down for it because they're friends. Something like that. Feel free to vote right now. What we'll do is we'll move on to the next piece of audio, okay? This is more to do with Kurt Wadsworth talking, the story through the events, I think, leading up to Saturday or around Saturday. You'll see.
Friday morning at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't believe he ever got there. I think they were waiting for his ass on the road on the way there. And they grabbed him on Friday. So they had, Friday? All day Friday, Saturday. Sunday is when,
Karen.
Right, so after hearing that, you can follow the theme about Kurt shifting the blame elsewhere with who's responsible to Dylan's disappearance and actually naming it in a vague way that it's more than one person responsible. Them. Who are them Kurt is talking about? Well, we can get more into it shortly, but I assume it's referring to Chase Venstra and Robert Aviles, because those names have come up several times in the past, and Kurt Wadsworth has mentioned their names, and Kurt has also mentioned about not being a fan of Venstra or Aviles and other Montello locals disliking those guys, right? More about that later. What I do want to say is, there was also a little bit of talk as well. Take in mind, I didn't want to show too much just in case of copyright, right? You just got to keep it at a basic level. You can check the video out yourself if you want to. I can provide a link down below as a form of credit, okay? But let's talk about the grain truck saying it wasn't there, but it was, but it wasn't. It's to do with the wording, right? I was unable to understand the wording of it just simply because of the flow of the conversation. You got shitty audio from some kind of phone conversation going on from Kurt. Audio is a bit muffled. But then the way Kaylee talks at times, I'm sure it's Kaylee, the one that does it. Yeah, I think it is. Kaylee, her voice pattern, tone is a little bit abrupt at times. Sudden U-turns. That's what I would call it. U-turn language tone. It's like, whoa, sudden directions. Slow it down. So when I get accused of talking too slow, it could appear as boring. you can obviously speed the video up, and if not that, at least you get the opportunity to be able to hear what's coming out of one's mouth, you know, whether you agree or not. And I think when it comes to back-to-back conversations, that erraticness, it's hard to follow at times. I know there's a whole point behind it, having a conversation with someone and them telling you their side of the story from what they know of, right? But I don't know whether it be the audio, whether it be just the language, their wording, their accent, their tone, their pace of voice, but sometimes it's a bit hard to follow, okay? I don't know how it is for any of you, if you find it like that, difficult at times with certain people when you're watching videos. So I just left a portion out, but the bit that was clear to me, that's what I showed in that video just then, where Kurt Wadsworth was basically saying that Friday morning time, around 10 o'clock, 10 a.m, I assume, it just would be easier if people said 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. Just those little fine touches just makes it so much clearer and accurate to listen. But people don't seem to do that, and that's what's problematic. Though, from what I'm inferring and assuming, Friday morning, 10 a.m, Kurt Wadsworth suggesting that Dylan went out, going down the road, so basically leaving from his farm and going on off to where? Well, I assume the grain shed, from that discussion that was taking place before that audio about the grain truck being put there or not, whatever, right? But along the way on Friday, 10 a.m, Dylan driving down that dirt road, there was an ambush, and someone like Robert Aviles and Chase Venstra were present to get a hold of Dylan and kidnap him. Is this where it all ties in with that past rumour about that horse box and the magic rope which wrapped around the neck? I don't know. All I would say is, with Kurt to come out with something like that, how does he ultimately know? And when it comes to the grain truck, whether it's in the shed or not, at any point, any time, in, out, shake it all about, how does Kurt know? Because he was told about it? Or was he because he was physically there? If he was physically there, then maybe he did see more than what actually happened, and he's hiding something. And if he's not hiding anything, but he's just getting his information from what he's heard of others, such as Don or mainly Brenner, well, who's to say the information you're receiving from is the truth? Brenner, Don could be twisting it or could be lying themselves when you receive the info. And if it's not that, and you do hear the truth or know roughly, but then you bend it yourself, well, that's probably because of the loyalty factor and being friends with Brenner. So you're trying to cover for him and shift the blame elsewhere on two guys that are likely hated by maybe the majority or some Montello locals. So when those guys' names pop up in Dylan rounds, everybody believes it and thinks, oh yeah, those two are responsible. Brenner, nah. There's no manipulation changing the narrative, right? So it's either a form of manipulation changing the narrative or a natural, psychological, emotional state of denial Kurt Wadsworth is in and can't comprehend at this moment in time with what Brenner has done, right? Anything else to add on in? I mean, you can give your own thoughts and opinions to how you interpret the audio recording, the audio of what Kurt said, what Pancakes said. Just wanted to keep it on a small scale just for now at least. I know people said they wanted focuses on other people within the case like I did with Brenner recently. Well, I feel like I've done that today with Kurt to an extent on a psychological scale. Just small but effective, right? But the shifting of blame to others makes sense. You shift blame, you change the narrative because you're protecting someone. I get that, right? And if it's not that, it's because you just have either been lied to or you're in denial, right? More genuine. You got to decide which one's more likely the case here. As for the investigators or the people online that are trying to cover it and question everything, whether it be the titles of the videos or some of the stuff stated within them here and there, 1 minute it seems as if people are in support of Kurt Wadsworth, certain people. The next thing you know, they're against them and questioning the person. It's just a little bit all over the place, right? Yeah, I mean, you can give your thoughts as well, but we're being so back and forth, right? Not just information, but allegiances and how one talks with another. Sometimes it could be a bit hard to keep up and follow along, right? So I think we'll leave it there for now, right? Just a bit of a hybrid video. If you got any questions, list them down below in the comment section. Was there any resistance? I don't know, but I don't have the whip with me, though that new custom emoji one is present, okay? So we'll see what happens next, of course. Add in any more points down below if needed, if you couldn't fit it into the chat due to the limit of being only 200 characters. And yeah, see what happens next. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. That's it for now. Goodbye and good night.